when you're developing a multi-agent system for your software development lifecycle. You can have multi-coding agents, all of them writing code in parallel or sequential, and you need to decide how you want to do that. You can have a diversity of agents with different roles. So roughly speaking, there's multiple considerations you need to have.
There are certain tasks that are super repeatable, super automatable, where you can get just another level of automation, another level of productivity boost by running multiple agents in the cloud to take down these like very automatable, tech debt-oriented tasks.
Is there value in saying, I'm going to use different models, different agents, different vendors of agents in terms of doing different roles?
So I think some people, when they're thinking about different agents, the first thing pops into mind, some people, is like, okay, I give it a different prompt or something like that. That architecture is basically like an architecture of one single agent that rules them all. That all you need to do is give it different tools and different like prompt or so. That's one option. The other option is that the agents are much more different than that. For example, their entire architecture, their graph of how they build might be completely different. For example, if you're dealing with a coding agent, then in order to really do its job, like it's actually, at least until now, proven that you need to enable its creativity. Because we developers, we bump into a lot of issues and we bypass and this and that. And actually, the fact that the core is an LLM making the decision is a good architecture for a coding agent. At least what we're seeing, for example, in Sweetbench, if you're familiar. And then when you're talking about other types of agents, for example, you want to have a security agent, or you want to have a code review agent, that agent might want to have actually much more structure. Checking A, B, C, D. For example, you might have like 100 rules. That's how do you get them with subtopic we can talk about. You want to have 100 rules that you want to make sure that are obeyed. And then you want that agent, the review agent, to be much more structured. There is an LLM there, but the graph of that agent might be like 1 to 10, where LLM is involved, but actually it's quite structured there. So, and by the way, you might give it different permissions, etc. So overall, like there is a discussion: do you have one agent that rules it all, or multiple agents? What we're seeing, of course, like when you're dealing with enterprise grade, heavy duty, brownfield, when compliance, standardization, etc., you must have like different agents that are completely different than each other.
Different vendors, so maybe like, I don't know, a Claude Code or Claude or something like that. Do you find like that will be better in a specific role? So like, is there a specific
definitely.
vendor that is best for code reviews or security testing, like you said?
Yeah, actually it's a good point to continue from my last point, where different vendors have different DNA and different like point of view on the world. Like Anthropic believe, at least what I understand, is that models everything. And you need to give that model the brain of everything, and you need to give them like agents in order to operate in the world. These tools need to be quite simple, actually on the fly. Why do you need to start doing retrieval augmented generation? Just give it a simple tool like ASD grep, etc. That's actually pretty good, like I believe, let's say structure and way of thinking for coding agents. But then when you look under security review agent, if you're familiar, like 3, 4, 5 months ago, what all the rage, and you take a look on the prompt, you are now a security review agent. And then there is a prompt, and then there is like a list of exclusion. Don't look at DDoS, don't look on that. Like basically it's, when you're doing a security agent, you need 1 plus of 1 minus of that. Here is everything that you need to check rigorously, and then you can be creative on all the rest. When you're doing coding agent, you want to relax it and say what not. But when you're doing a security agent, then actually you need to do a 1 minus of what they're doing. So I would use their Claude Code, for example, as a vendor when you talk about Claude Code as coding agent. But I don't think it's like you can just set up with a different prompt to be like all type of agents out there. You need a different vendor.
Absolutely. And very briefly, because I see people are kicking out now, so it might get a bit noisy. Very, very briefly, in terms of context, like security is a great example where there's a ton of context that you can provide an agent to say, look, here are your rules. This is what you have to check for. At what point does the task that you give an agent just become so overwhelming it starts doing a poor job? Security review is a great example. Code review maybe even with a large number of styling rules and those types of things. Where's the limit for that?
Yeah, context is extremely important. I can say superlative context is the king, the kingdom, etc. But it's extremely important. Actually, I talked about it that developers report that 33 to 80% depends on which tech and how you ask it. Think that context is actually the major problem of bad quality and hallucination and things like that. And that's our number one request from coding agent to improve. The thing is that context is not just one thing. It's not just a code base. It could be, for example, a database of vulnerabilities. It could be, for example, Qodo is the leading AI code review tool. For example, we have a database related to best practices and rules that we project depending on the stack of what you have, etc. And we learn it from different interaction with developers in the context engine. So we collect a database that related to best practices and rules. And then it's really you really need to fetch the right context. And then it's not just when you're thinking about context, on one hand it is you have too much not accurate. The other is exactly only what you need.
Yeah.
In the middle, for example, it could be a lot of non-relevant but all the relevant, etc.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a spectrum. And of course, the one of the hardest thing is actually bringing the right context. And then what we see, the hardest is bringing the right context and then making sure it's only that there.
Yeah.
These are the priorities.
Yeah.
And then that could define a lot. For example, as I mentioned, security companies might have context relevant for security that regular coding agent do not have. Code review solution like Qodo might have additional context that is relevant to best practice standard, etc. that regular coding agent don't have. That's how the way I look at it. How do you bring the right context and then cut that you don't have too much, because there is the context rot. If you want to read more about it, that's like Anthropic and other companies talk about the context rot.
Yeah, super interesting, and so correct, so right as well, because context, but giving too much context, you think, okay, I've got all these rules that I need to follow. You throw it all in one go, and actually it's just going to forget what it wants to forget, or it's not going to add it. It's not going to add
I think
it.
if I connect all the dots we talked about, context is very important, maybe one of the most important, and then is how you use them. When you upload, for example, context Cloud Code or Cursor, for them it's part of the, part of their just literally the context, and then they just keep pushing that in the context in their graph. If you give it same prompt with the same context 7 times, you get 7 different solutions.
Yeah.
But so I do want to say context is important, but then how you use it. While maybe other tools will use it very differently, more in a workflow, verifying different things, etc.
Yeah.
So context is extremely important. And I just want to add on what you're saying, not completely following the context is also a matter of how you build the agents.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's another point.
Absolutely.
Consider that.
Itamar, it's been awesome. It's been awesome catching up.
Hello, joining me here is Robert Brennan, who is the CEO of OpenHands. Robert, good to see you here.
Yeah, good to see you as well.
And of course, I saw you here, well not here, but in New York only a few weeks ago for AI Native DevCon.
Yeah.
Good to see you again.
Yeah, no, likewise.
What's your session going to be about today?
So we're going to be talking about how to scale code maintenance with AI agents. I would say there's a lot of tasks where developers are, for their day-to-day feature development, they're used to pairing with Claude Code or the OpenHands CLI locally on their laptop. And that works great for your ad hoc work. You pick up a ticket, you need to work on it. But there are certain tasks that are super repeatable, super automatable, where you can get just another level of automation, another level of productivity boost by running multiple agents in the cloud to take down these very automatable, tech debt-oriented tasks.
Awesome. And I guess when we talk about maintenance, what kind of things are we talking about? Typical maintenance tasks that a developer would do.
Yeah, so very typical things would be things like dependency management, resolving open source vulnerabilities that happen in your code base. And then some meatier tasks like, maybe upgrading from Python 2 to Python 3, or upgrading, from an old version of Java to a new version of Java, maybe migrating from COBOL to Java or another more modern programming language. There's a lot of these toily tasks that developers don't really like doing. They don't involve a lot of creativity or critical thinking. It's mostly just a lot of churning out lines of code, but they're still too big for a single agent to one-shot in many cases.
Right.
And so doing what we call agent orchestration can allow you to put some forethought into how you're going to solve this repeatable problem in a way that can scale across many code bases, and then just automate it 90% of the way there, and just have a human in the loop for the very little bit where you need that last bit of verification.
So let's talk about agent orchestration then. So when we talk about agent orchestration, we're obviously talking about multiple agents. Do they have to be the same agent, or can they just be different vendors, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think it's helpful to be working within a single agent framework, right? There's nothing necessarily stopping one agent from talking to another agent. And there are, there's the A2A protocol and things like that. But what we've tried to build with OpenHands SDK is like a single framework that allows you to create multiple different agents with like different system prompts, different sets of tools that they have access to, different MCP servers that they have access to, and maybe different behavior patterns, right? And then getting those agents talking to each other is, it gives you kind of like a single framework for thinking about how to coordinate multiple agents together.
Right. And when we start with kind of like a large task, typically that a number of agents can all work on.
Yeah.
We don't obviously just throw that large task at all these agents, this
Yeah.
group of agents. We need to break that task down.
Exactly.
What's the process of kind of breaking that down? Is there an amount of human interaction in that, or can we somewhat automate that for AI as well?
Yeah, I think that's kind of the most critical step is like, how are you going to break this problem down into sub pieces that individual agents can execute on, right? So I think that's where the most human thought goes into the process. But you can, work with, an LLM like Claude, for instance, to kind of talk through the problem and help, like get some help from an LLM to break down the problem into manageable bite-sized tasks. But you're also going to have to really lean on your own intuition for what is actually solvable, what's reviewable by a human. What can you give to the agent that you can then look at on the other end when it gives you some output and quickly verify, did it do the thing or did it not?